For a brief shining moment, the thoroughbreds in the corporate stable had it good. The hay was organic. The pastures were open for flexible grazing, and the trainers spoke in soothing tones about wellness and work-life balance. The catered lunches, the unlimited PTO, the wellness stipends, these weren't just perks, they were signals. A sign that the prize horses, the knowledge workers, were so valuable that they needed to be coddled, cared for, and kept happy at all costs. But the owners of the stable were always watching the stopwatch. And this year, a new horse entered the race. One made of silicon and lightning. It doesn't need to sleep. It doesn't get injured. It runs faster, learns faster. And its upkeep is a fraction of the cost. And suddenly, the performance of the flesh and blood horses doesn't look so impressive. The pampering has stopped. The open pastures are being fenced off. The message from the owners is no longer about comfort. It's about pace. It's about intensity. It's about proving you can still run faster than the machine. The soft benefits, it turns out, were never a right. They were a luxury afforded by a lack of competition. Now, the competition is here, and it's an algorithm. Welcome back to AI Replaced Me. It's August 15th, 2025. I'm your host, Koby Ofek, and this is episode 15. Today, we lead with the story that defines this new era of corporate intensity, where the free kombucha is gone and the 80-hour workweek is back. Then, we'll dissect a landmark report from Goldman Sachs that tries to put a number on the coming job market disruption. Is it a jolt or an earthquake? And finally, we'll connect the dots on the global stage, showing how geopolitical chaos is quietly creating the perfect conditions for AI to rewire the world of work. Let's get into it. Our top story? The era of employee coddling is officially over. A report from Axios this week crystallized a sentiment that's been brewing in boardrooms for months. The pendulum is swinging back hard, away from flexibility and towards a new, non-negotiable demand for intensity and productivity. This isn't just about getting people back into the office. It's a fundamental redefinition of the human's role in an AI-powered enterprise. And two companies, in very different ways, are leading the charge. First, let's look at the bellwether of corporate control, AT&T. Back in January of this year, the telecommunications giant ended its hybrid work model and mandated a strict 5-day in-office week for its office workers. Now, this wasn't a sudden reversal. It was the culmination of a long-held philosophy. As far back as 2023, CEO John Stankey was clear about his expectations, stating that employees needed to decide if they wanted to be part of building the company's culture. If they want to be a part of building a great culture and environment, he said, they'll come along on these adjustments. Others may decide to move in a different direction. The official justification, of course, is the familiar corporate mantra of fostering collaboration and innovation. And while there is some logic to that, the broader context suggests a deeper motive, a strategic, top-down effort to reassert control and enforce a specific presence-based vision of work, a vision that a growing body of research suggests has, at best, a mixed impact on actual productivity. But if AT&T represents the traditional command and control version of this new era, our second case study represents its bleeding-edge Silicon Valley incarnation. Meet Cognition AI. It's the startup behind Devon, the much-hyped AI software engineer. This summer, after acquiring a rival startup called Windsurf, Cognition's 29-year-old founder, Scott Wu, presented the 200 newly acquired employees with a stark choice. Commit to an 80-plus hour work week, including nights and weekends, or accept a generous 9-month buyout and leave. The deadline was August 10th. Wu's rationale, laid out in an internal email, was breathtakingly blunt. We don't believe in work-life balance, he wrote. Building the future of software engineering is a mission we all care so deeply about that we couldn't possibly separate the two. This isn't just a demanding boss. This is a cultural manifesto. The AI industry is locked in a hyper-competitive, high-stakes arms race for dominance. To compete at this level, leaders like Wu are explicitly rejecting the entire ethos of the last decade. Flexibility, balance, wellness, and embracing what he calls an extreme performance culture as a competitive weapon. The 9-month buyout wasn't just severance, it was a strategic investment. It was a filter designed to purge anyone not fully aligned with the mission and ensure that only the most intensely committed individuals remained. Cognition AI's policy, therefore, isn't an outlier. It's a powerful signal, a potential blueprint for the kind of work culture that may become the norm for those competing at the frontier of artificial intelligence. So what's driving this sudden, coordinated pivot to intensity? It's the convergence of three powerful forces. First, the AI catalyst itself. As AI's capabilities grow, it creates a new, unspoken performance standard. The question echoing in every manager's mind is, why am I paying a full-time human salary for output that an AI can match or exceed for a fraction of the cost? This pressure forces the human contribution to be exceptional, not merely competent. It has to be the kind of creative, strategic, or complex problem-solving work that algorithms can't yet replicate. The bar for human value has been raised. Second, and this is the crucial enabler, is a softening labor market. Let's look at the numbers. The latest Bureau of Labor Statistics report for July 2025 showed that payroll employment changed very little, adding only 73,000 jobs. More alarmingly, the numbers for the previous 2 months, May and June, were revised downward by a combined 258,000 jobs. The unemployment rate is holding steady around 4.2%, but hiring rates are low and the market has clearly cooled from the frenzy of a few years ago. This shift in the labor market is the enforcement mechanism for the new era of intensity. When the market was tight, employees had the leverage to demand flexibility and perks. In a softer market, that leverage shifts dramatically back to the employer. With fewer outside options and a pervasive anxiety about job security, an anxiety amplified by AI itself, employees are far less likely to resist stricter mandates. The soft labor market allows companies like AT and Cognition to implement these demanding policies without fearing a mass exodus. The implication for the workforce is profound. If the new baseline for employment demands constant peak-level intensity, what happens to the human need for rest, reflection, or even the creative space to fail? This isn't just a return to the office, it's a recalibration of the very soul of work. And it's a model that feels less like a sustainable strategy and more like a recipe for mass burnout. Host, now in a conversation so often dominated by utopian dreams and dystopian nightmares, a dose of sober, data-driven analysis can feel like a lifeline. This week, we got one. A report published on August 13th by Goldman Sachs Research cuts through the noise, offering a grounded forecast on AI's real-world impact on jobs. Their central thesis is that the disruption, while real, will be more of a transient jolt than a permanent earthquake. Let's deconstruct their numbers. First, they project a temporary and relatively modest rise in the US unemployment rate of about 0.5 percentage point during the peak of the AI transition, as displaced workers find new roles. Second, they estimate that if AI's efficiency gains translate directly into job cuts, around 2.5% of US jobs are at direct risk. The list of vulnerable roles contains no surprises. Computer programmers, accountants and auditors, legal and administrative assistants, and customer service representatives. And third, the big upside. They forecast a massive 15% increase in labor productivity across developed markets once generative AI is fully integrated. This, historically, is the engine of economic growth, and crucially, the creation of entirely new kinds of work. To buttress this optimistic long-term view, the report leans heavily on historical context, pointing out that roughly 60% of the jobs people do today simply did not exist in 1940. Think about that. There were no software developers, no social media managers, no data scientists, no MRI technicians. Technology, the argument goes, has always been a net job creator. But this is where we have to pause and ask a critical question. Is the historical parallel flawed this time? Past technological waves, like mechanization or even the first wave of computerization, primarily automated routine manual and cognitive tasks. This pushed the human workforce up the value chain, creating new jobs that required the very skills machines couldn't replicate: creativity, critical thinking, complex communication, and emotional intelligence. Generative AI is the first technology in history to directly target those same higher-order skills. This means the reskilling pathway for those displaced today is fundamentally different. A displaced accountant, whose core skill is rule-based analysis, faces a much greater and more abstract leap to become, say, an AI ethics auditor than a displaced farmer did to become a factory worker. The historical reassurance, while comforting on a macro level, may dangerously understate the severity and complexity of the reskilling challenge we face now. And the Goldman Sachs report itself provides the data to prove that this temporary jolt isn't some far-off event. It's already happening. The report contains a crucial and frankly chilling detail. The tech sector's share of total employment, which grew in a remarkably straight line for 2 decades, has fallen below its pre-pandemic trend since late 2022. And the impact is not being felt evenly. The most important data point in the entire report is this: unemployment among tech workers aged 20 to 30 has risen by almost 3 percentage points since the start of this year. This isn't just a statistic. This is the first tremor of the earthquake, concentrated on a specific, vulnerable demographic. These are the entry-level roles, the first rung on the career ladder, in the very industry creating the disruption. This validates a theme we've explored before on this show, the crisis of the broken bridge, where the path from education to a stable career is crumbling for new graduates. So, while the Goldman Sachs report offers a reassuring long-term forecast, its own data confirms that the painful transitional jolt is not a future event. For the youngest, most recently educated members of the tech workforce, it is a present-day reality. The transition has already begun. Our final story today is about seeing the connections, about understanding that AI doesn't operate in a vacuum. A multifaceted report in the Financial Times yesterday painted a picture of a world grappling with geopolitical tension and economic fragility. On the surface, it was a collection of disparate headlines. But if you look closer, you can see the invisible hand of AI, a silent variable that interacts with, accelerates, and often complicates every major global story. Let's start on the geopolitical chessboard. The report detailed US President Donald Trump's efforts to broker a peace deal in Ukraine, culminating in a high-stakes meeting with Vladimir Putin in Alaska, notably without the direct involvement of Ukrainian President Zelensky. This is pure human conflict and diplomacy, but the AI subtext is profound. Prolonged instability and geopolitical risk create a powerful corporate imperative for automation. Companies facing volatile regions and fragile supply chains will inevitably accelerate their adoption of AI and robotics to build more resilient, human-independent operations. In a chaotic world, AI becomes a tool for corporate survival. Then there are the economic fault lines. The report highlighted growing signs of stagnation in the UK job market, with low recruitment and uncertain prospects. It also pointed to escalating commercial loan risks for banking giant HSBC tied to a property slump in Hong Kong. These are localized tremors, but they create the perfect conditions for AI to find leverage. In a weak economy, the pressure to cut costs and boost efficiency via AI becomes immense, potentially accelerating job cuts, even in sectors not traditionally seen as automatable. But the most direct and existential part of this story takes us to India, and it synthesizes a trend we've been tracking for months. India's IT services industry is a global powerhouse. It's a $284 billion sector that contributes over 7% to the nation's GDP and employs more than 5 million people. For decades, its success was built on a simple, powerful model, providing vast human capital to perform complex, often repetitive, back-end IT services for the world's largest companies. That entire model is now under direct assault from AI. The threat is twofold. First, AI is proving exceptionally good at automating the very back-end service and routine coding roles that have been the bedrock of the industry. This isn't a future threat. It's a present reality. Top firms like Tata Consultancy Services, or TCS, are already responding, announcing layoffs and aggressive reskilling programs to pivot their workforce toward higher value AI-centric roles. But the second threat is deeper and far more strategic. It's what we can call the foundational lag. India's IT giants have been brilliant at implementing and applying technology that was developed elsewhere, but in the AI economy, the real value, the real power is shifting from implementation to the creation of the core foundational AI models. And in that race, India has fallen dangerously behind the United States and China, only recently launching its official India AI mission. A country that primarily consumes and applies AI rather than creating it at a foundational level risks becoming a low-margin digital colony. It becomes perpetually dependent on foreign technology, unable to capture the highest value work in the new economy. The threat to India's IT sector, therefore, isn't just about losing some back-office jobs. It's a potential hollowing out of its entire economic value proposition on the world stage. And India's story is a microcosm. It's a stark warning for any nation, any industry, or any company whose strategy has been built on applying the tools rather than inventing them. In the AI era, that is an increasingly precarious position to be in. And now, for our future forward flashes, where we look at other signals of our AI-driven future. First up, the self-cutting revolution. A new report from Challenger, Gray, and Christmas puts a hard number on AI's impact. In the first 7 months of 2025 alone, over 10,000 job cuts were directly attributed to the adoption of generative AI. The total since 2023 is now over 27,000. The real punchline? The tech sector itself is leading the charge, announcing over 89,000 cuts so far this year, a 36% increase from last year, proving that the creators of the tool are the first and most aggressive users of it to optimize their own workforce. Next, when AI becomes the analyst, the finance industry is undergoing a quiet but radical re-engineering. Hedge fund Porchester Capital, founded by Omar Syed, is now using large language models to automate roughly 75% of the tasks traditionally handled by human analysts, resulting in a team that is 4 times more efficient. Meanwhile, investment giant Man Group has developed Alpha GPT, an AI tool designed to streamline quantitative research. It's a clear sign that high-skill, high-paid analytical jobs are being fundamentally re-architected. as Syed himself put it, in a quote that perfectly captures the shift in competitive advantage: Millennium can't poach the AI. And finally, the algorithm as agent and defendant. Last week, we mentioned California's new AI regulations for HR. This week, the most critical detail came into focus: the new rules, which take effect October 1st, expand the legal definition of an employer's agent to include third-party AI vendors. This is a game changer. It means the companies building and selling these HR tools can now be held directly liable for discriminatory outcomes. This forces fairness by design and transparency not as an ethical nice-to-have, but as a legal and commercial necessity. The black box of AI hiring is being forced open. The stories this week paint a picture of a great convergence. The pressure on the individual worker is intensifying, driven by a new corporate culture that values relentless productivity above all else. This is happening within a broader economic reality of targeted, painful displacement for some, even as new, higher-level opportunities are forecast for others. And this entire dynamic is being accelerated by a chaotic global landscape, where instability makes automation a strategic imperative for survival. The future of work is being shaped not by one single force, but by the violent collision of these three: technological capability, economic pressure, and geopolitical instability. Navigating this new world requires a level of personal and organizational agility we've never had to muster before. It's no longer about preparing for a single storm on the horizon. It's about learning to operate in a permanently volatile climate. This new, complex reality is the very terrain I map out in my book, Keep Your Day Job: How to AI-Proof Your Career. It's designed to be a practical guide for building the resilience and strategic foresight you need right now. It's available on Amazon and wherever you get your books. Join me next week on AI Replaced Me as we continue to track the signals. Thanks for tuning in.